How many people have heard about the 1 cent tax that she was talking about? Have you read it in the newspaper? I need to have some change.
Sorry, that's me.
Okay, so pretty much everybody has read in the Tampa Bay Times about this 1% rate, which came out about June 9th of this past June. How many people have heard of this plan? Okay. Bottom line is, this was brought before the Hillsborough County Commissioners on April the 4th. It was vetted by Mr. Merrill, the county administrator, wanted those numbers vetted by his chief financial officer, the director of finance, Bonnie Wise, by his director of the budget, Tom Fessler, and the chief economist for Hillsborough County, Kevin Brickley. And Sharon and I went to a meeting, as did several of the commissioners, and on June the 6th, they reported to the county commissioners that those numbers were indeed correct. Those are accurate estimates for all the revenue plans that are up there. They're correct, and the estimations over 30 years are correct. The Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners, it adds up to about $13 billion, voted unanimously, Democrats and Republicans, to advance this plan to the next level and send it on to the Citizens Advisory Committee to look at and digest and get back their recommendations. That plan was never published by the Tampa Tribune or the Tampa Times. They have refused to publish this under any circumstances. And I have sent this thing to them on multiple occasions, to all their staff, their editorial board, everybody there. I actually gave a copy of that on April 4th to the Tampa Bay Times reporter who was sitting in the room. You are looking at about roughly $13 billion up there. It won't take long to go through it. This thing, the only thing this thing does is between 2021 and 2026, the sales tax goes up 0.25%. After that, your taxes don't go up at all. You are going to pay all of those things anyway. Okay? The first revenue stream is the mobility fees, which was passed in the spring of 2016. That's for new construction, mostly in southern Hillsborough County. That goes $600 million over 25 years, $725 million over 30 years. If that 1 cent tax is passed, that gets reduced by almost 50%. It will decrease the ability to fight sprawl on the part of the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners. Number 2 is a restructuring of the current transportation plan that I helped put together with dealing with the increasing ad valorem revenues that the county receives every year. And we showed them, and Ed Dranchek and Steve Folzine showed them that they were collecting so much money that they could take some of that and put it together for a transportation plan to do the repaving, the repairs. What I did was in 2021, because of the homestead exemption, which is a great idea, we decreased that by $30 million, started with 20, and then every year for 30 years added $2 million, which is roughly 4% of just the increased revenues they're going to be receiving every year. That adds up to $1.5 billion. Just doing that little simple thing, using revenue taxes that you are already paying, is going to add up to $1.5 trillion. Number 3 is the value capture. And this is where the real heart of the matter is. The entire transit system basically is going to go through the city of Tampa. In that 1 cent sales tax, they will receive almost 50%, more than 50% of the revenues, about 53% will be spent within the city of Tampa, even though their population is only 27% of the population. It's basically an attack on unincorporated Hillsborough County. But those are easy numbers. The FTA Dear Colleague letter saying that if you want to build transit in your town, you better have value capture in it. They strongly recommend that you have value capture in it. And value capture is a whole host of things, from tax increment financing to air development rights, to development rights around stations, to split taxing where they tax the land at a greater level than they tax the buildings that are on it. So it's a whole pile of things. And over 30 years, they would have to come up with $250 million. The CRAs in the city of Tampa alone which use tax income and financing, over the last 15 years have brought in $340 million. So $250 million over 30 years, paid for by the people who are going to benefit from the transit, is nothing. And that way the people of Hillsborough County outside the city of Tampa don't have to spend a dime on it. Number 4 is the county transportation sales tax. They want to make it 1%. I put in 0.25% here. Over 30 years, it raises $4 billion. And the renewed CIT tax, which has to be renewed, we currently have one now at 1/2 cent. We were going to renew it at 1/4 cent. It would take the state, would have to allow us to decrease it. But their research shows that it's in the state's best interest to keep sales taxes in the counties as low as possible because it helps their revenue stream. So all those things are completely doable. And all of this adds up to roughly about $13 billion, pays for everything in the 2040 transportation plan. About $8.5 billion of new revenues on top of the roughly $10 to $11 billion in revenue that is going to be there, what they call existing revenues. So the total would be about $20 billion over 30 years. That is enough to pay for everything. And your taxes would only go up for 6 years by 0.25% on your sales tax. That is why the Tampa Bay Times will not print this. Because they don't use in there the number 3 value, the value capture. That is the part that they were talking about where all the corruption occurs, where they get subsidized all the development around, actually they're going to use it for the baseball stadium, and they're going to use it to, for a bunch of other projects, maybe even Brightline is going to get in on it. But the bottom line is, between that and the other reason, in 2005, the transportation plan for Hillsborough County has been unchanged for the last 25 years. I was there when they made it. It was front-loaded against the ICE-T legislation of the early 90s and late 80s, and said you had to have multimodal transportation plans set up on your MPOs. So they set up a scoring system where the more modalities you had, the higher the score. Well, if you have a train added to a bus and a road, you're going to get a higher score than if you just had a road and a bus. And that's how it occurred. And it has been unchanged. The routes pretty much have been unchanged for the last 25 years. We have been held hostage by that plan for 25 years. They have not passed a they have not financed their 20-year plan for a generation. For 25 years, that is why your roads are in disrepair. That is why your bridges are in disrepair. That is why they're not ready for the new technology that's coming out. This accomplishes all of that without raising your taxes. So I would urge you that when somebody says there's no alternatives, there are alternatives. They don't want the alternative to get out because nobody in their right mind would vote for a 1 cent sales tax when they could do it all for this price. I thank you very much for your time.
Well, basically, it's only because of the people in this room and those people that are friends of ours that have all stood up that we even are here today to talk about options. Because we have fought, we've understood the thrashing machine that we're up against. So we're going to take some questions for the local part of this presentation. Now they talked about Hillsborough. We also have more that's being done by PSTA. They're putting together, and I don't think many people know about it, which is a bus rapid transit that they have up at the Federal Trade Administration for approval for grants, and this is going to be taking a lane out of First Avenue North and First Avenue South for 60-foot buses that are called reticulated buses that bend in the middle, and they have got that all the way to the goalpost up in Washington. And again, what we're seeing is, and Randall O'Toole said this a few years ago, and I never forgot him saying this, what we're seeing with public transportation is an attempt to remain relevant. And they will go to any means to remain relevant. So I think we've seen today that the private sector is challenging public agencies for efficiency. So with that, let's take some questions. Yes.
Karen, there was an article in the paper about the study group, but they're talking about running a bus from Wesley Chapel to Tampa to St. Pete. I was wondering who's going to fund that? How are they going to fund that?
Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I actually went through that slide. That was the one I was showing you where they pared it down to $8 to $10 per trip.
Yeah, but who's paying for it?
Yeah, well, the study is being paid for FDOT, and they awarded that grant to Hart, and then Hart went out for bid and hired the consultant. And they're trying to get federal funds. They're hoping for a 50% match from the feds, which means we do have to come up with a local match. So it's these types of projects that, this quest for federal funds where they need a local match, which is kind of seeding these referendums.
Right, but you got 3 counties involved in this bus.
Yeah, well, and that's,
why I'm asking who's funding it.
so ultimately I believe what they thought was gonna happen is that it was going to be, the winning alternative was gonna be the CSX lines that go from downtown Tampa all the way up to Citrus County, I think, Spring Hill, well, Citrus County, 90 miles worth of rail, but the costs were so prohibitive that it kind of morphed. So basically, they thought they were going to get a horse and they got a camel, right? But they have to justify their existence. So it's better than it could have been, but I think that was the impetus over 2011, and it's actually gone way back prior to that. But that was the whole reason for merging the transit agencies, because they want a regional governance, and then what you're going to find the next step is there will be a regional tax.
Right, well, that's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah.
I don't believe they have a regional tax, but I know they want one.
Yes.
And that's why I was asking, without a regional tax, how would they divide up who's going to pay for this bus that was running through 3 counties, train, whatever?
And that's right, and we think that was the original reason why T-BARTA was set up to begin with in 2007. In case you don't know, also they're doing another study on regionalizing our MPOs. So the whole regionalism issue is concerning, and we have to watch out because statutorily they can put, I believe T-BARTA can put a regional tax on the ballot.
Just to show you how crazy it is they have this Wesley Chapel Road running down from Wesley Chapel down 275, maybe in the median, maybe get off. At the same time, the MPO is studying tearing down I-275 from just north of MLK all the way to Bears Avenue, making a boulevard out of it and putting the Champs-Élysées de Tampa at one end. So if you live in Pinellas County, you won't have a chance to get out of it. You'll have to go down I-4 or you'll get stuck in the floodplains. So that's how crazy they are doing it. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing.
Most of the people today talked about transportation, and I know this is billed as transportation and land use. It just seems to me that land use drives the transportation issue, and if you have high density like New York, your transportation solutions are very different than sprawl area like Los Angeles. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about the cart before the horse. I mean, the land use issue and what the state of play is on that. In other words, are there mandates, for example, are there mandates like zoning and NIMBY lawsuits and environmental impact which prevent certain areas from having high density skyscrapers and so on, and thus those areas could be served by transit?
Yeah, I mean, Tampa in particular is one of the 25 top metro areas. I think we're 25th, but if you look at land area, we're the largest. We're number 1 in size. So we don't have the density to do this. And interesting you say that. A lot of folks actually the opposite, that are have this urban, utopia. They are looking to. They want to increase the densities, and so there are some things they want to get rid of parking. They want to have skyscrapers. There's whole threads of these urbanists. That's where they focus on. How tall is the next building? We don't have the density to do that. I liked, again, the plan that Hart had where we start small, It's, it's, so there, and you know what, missing from all this discussion, and John's in the back, he's still on the Heart Board, and we serve together, but he can vouch for this. There are people that come that are transit dependent, that are not the choice rider. Woman Janice, she's a young mother who, after she had her child, she became blind. And she still holds a job, and she actually has some of our paratransit service. So, I'm for a safety net, until the point where the private sector can take over. But we can't, we're always going after this quest for the choice rider, but we're forgetting the people who don't have a choice and they have to ride this. So when we try and reach out into the suburbs, there's a diminishing return on your investment. It used to be, when you went to buy a house and you needed transit, you would look on, you want a house on the bus line. We've forgotten that, and unfortunately, it's those people who get caught in this mix.
And actually, from a land use perspective, Hillsborough County has an urban service boundary. We have planning commissions. We got so many bureaucratic stuff. But the problem is when it comes to votes and waivers and whatever. It's who's in office and who makes these decisions, because they make these rules and then they don't play by them, which is a problem. But one of the things I think that Jim mentioned is Hillsborough County just put that mobility fee in. And if this tax got passed, the whole intention for that is out the door. So it's kind of interesting because the urbanists like that stuff, yet they're willing to put that out the door. It's just kind of a group of people that seem to step on each other's toes.
Just
That's that sales
talk about
tax,
the land use.
that mobility fee.
The Tampa comprehensive plan is already in place that if they pass a transit plan and build a transit system, that comprehensive plan is then replaced by a transit-oriented development transit plan, and everything within a half-mile radius around the station will have to change there'll be variances and new densities that are allowed to be put in. In Hillsborough County, there are groups like Lutz, New Tampa, there's several other community development plans, I think in Fishhawk, that hold, I think there's one up in Odessa too, that hold the densities at a much reduced rural level, so that you're never going to have densities for transit out in those places. So the bottom line is they're trying to eliminate you building the roads and road capacity improvements on your roads so that they can get the transit. And that's what has happened. And over the last 25 years, they have held us hostage. And we're talking about possibly having the FTA and the U.S. Highway Department of Transportation say, what is reasonable revenues? They've been trying to do this for 25 years and haven't been able to finance it. I hardly consider that reasonable. So we need your help, your social media, your digital, anybody that you can use to try to get the word out that this is what's going on. Otherwise, the people downtown are going to control your life and take your money.
Well, I'll add that if you read the media, you think all the development activity is in downtown Tampa or downtown St. Pete. But if you actually pull the building permits and look at occupancy or the single-family homes versus apartments, of course there's more apartments being built in Tampa, but if you pull it, it's like a 4-to-1 growth, greater development in Hillsborough County than in the city of Tampa. And that's been going on for decades. And people want to stop that. But then what are they going to do? City of Tampa's built out. Are they going to tear down and mow down Hyde Park? I don't think so. Give them a shot. Well, yeah, let them, well, I wouldn't hurt me any, but the narrative that you're hearing, maybe they should be doing all that stuff in downtown Tampa, great, whatever. But keep in mind, there's 4 times more activity and investment going on outside.
Over 30 years, 800,000 people are going to move into Hillsborough County. 3/4 of those are going to move to unincorporated Hillsborough County. The referendum that these two people just signed will prevent you. There is not enough money set aside by law in this charter amendment so that you, in unincorporated Hillsborough County, can widen the roads or build new roads for your traffic congestion. They're trying to make you ride the bus.
Here's a question here. You want to stand up, John?
Sure. I actually don't really have much of a question, so forgive me. It's more of a comment. As Karen mentioned, I currently serve on the Heart Board. So if you ever want to talk, reach out to Karen. I think she has my information. But I wanted to bring something up, and I want to talk about politics for a moment because it's inevitable. It's inescapable. A couple things I would say are, the principles that have been discussed today, I'm on board for. I'm a conservative. I'm also a Republican, obviously. But not well, anyways, I want to make a point about that. I don't typically wear, T-shirts to meetings like this. Typically I have a jacket on and a shirt. And I just want to make a comment about what I've been on the board for 6 years, like Karen. And some of the things that I've learned about them on the political side would just make your hair stand on end. One of the things that I want to encourage you to do is hold Republicans as accountable as we do anybody else. Because what I've learned is it's about integrity. And I'll give you an example. This past week, and you'll hear about it on Monday. There's a Heart Board meeting on Monday. I'll be speaking, and I would encourage you also to watch the board meeting from July 16th, where my words were read into the record. There's going to be a change in our CEO coming. Our current CEO is a fiscal conservative. I don't want to speak for him, but you can just look at his record. And I was an advocate of his, but there were Republicans that didn't want to have anything to do with it. I wouldn't, anyways. I'm not going to make that argument here. But my point is just with all of the great principles that we're talking about today, don't forget that if the person that you put in that seat doesn't have integrity, it's worth nothing. So, and that's why I'm working
Can I just make a quick comment because I wanted to say this at some point, but the woman standing to your left, Barb, is running for county commission, and she could be, for those of you in Pinellas, sitting on the PSTA, and we do need some conservative representation on that board. So I just wanted to put that plug. Barb led the No Tax or Tracks effort in 2014 with everybody probably in this room helping her, but just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, and I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up with a pat on the back. Thank you for answering the call and running. So I live on the Hillsborough side, and I'm just so happy to see that, Barb. Yeah. And just one more thing. On Monday, I'm going to be talking about, and it's interesting you brought it up, Karen, about the transportation dependent, disadvantaged, whatever phrase you want to use, because if we're not serving them, what are we doing? It's a transit agency. So I could talk for an hour, and I'll stop. And thank you.
Any last questions before we close? Go ahead.
I just get kind of discouraged sometimes because it seems like these things take on a life of their own. So I attended the Gateway Plan. This is Pinellas County. My husband and I ended up in St. Petersburg without knowing that it was like so down the road of ugly socialism. But anyway, well, I get kind of discouraged because I just don't know. Once these things get rolling, like this Gateway Plan, you attend it. Well, they've already got 14 studies and moving on to the next, and they have the public that are almost to me like window dressing there. And it just, I don't know what you can do because then it just seems like, oh great, it's going and aren't, like everybody said, the drawings are, so cool looking and they're going to put a new transit station and all this. I'm sitting here thinking they can't even fix our bridge that is so overdue for repairs. But I don't know how to get that across because these things just take on a life of their own and keep rolling and getting bigger. So what can we do?
Thank you, Dave.
Well, first of all, you can get Barb elected. I think what you're saying is it's really the bureaucracy. Remember in this petition, 5 pages of regulations? It's the bureaucracy. Sometimes you're not sure who's running things the electeds or the bureaucrats, but I'd say it's the bureaucrats because they're the ones that are there regardless of who's there. That's right. They're the entrenched ones. So you're absolutely right, but I will say this, don't be discouraged, be engaged, because the thing they fear most is you. I mean, when if you start going to these things, they will know who you are, and when you start bringing people, their boots will start shaking. So the best thing that we can do as a group of people for our side is to show up. Half the battle is showing up, because on the transit side on Hillsborough County, after Go Hillsborough, we kind of went to sleep, and the urbanists went full force, and you can tell where we're at now. We're fighting another sales tax hike.
Let me tell you, one thing you will find from the transit supporters, they will never bring a fact. Ever. They will never bring a fact to argue about what this is going to do for ridership, how much this is going to cost. They'll just say they want transit. So if you, and it's very simple. You can get the facts you need very simple off the internet. And if you take that and you bring that to them and you bring that to your politicians and the people who are running your government and transit agencies, you will stick out. They will know and they will remember you because you are dangerous. You are an informed voter, and that's the worst nightmare for a politician. Yes. So, and then pass it along to your friends. That's why we have all these Twitters and digitals and all this other stuff that we have in our kitchens. So I encourage you to get involved, stay involved until this fight is won. Thank you very much. Great.
Terry Howard. I'm actually a Republican candidate for the Florida House, District 64. I'm a first-time candidate. I like the shirt. I'm the Trump guy in the race. I just want to thank Eric for the invitation here. I'm here to learn, and the best thing I heard today was about getting involved. You have to engage with politicians. Too many of these people are owned by PACs, by lobbyists. It's all about money. Elect people that are going to be willing to donate their salary to charities in the district that are running for the right reasons. They're out there. There's some really, really good people running for office, but you got to get engaged. And it's folks like you that people like me can learn information about. I'm up in Northeast Pinellas County and also Northwest Hillsborough. It's Carrollwood and Keystone and all the way to Northdale. But you have to get engaged with the politicians. Because if you don't, all they have to listen to are the lobbyists and all their money. And unfortunately, Tallahassee is just as bad as Washington. So get engaged. This has been great information today. Thank you very much.
And Terry, I don't know if you know this, but Sharon talked about the bill to bring $25 million a year in perpetuity to T-BARTA rather than just decrease our dock stamp taxes. That bill was carried by your opponent, the incumbent. So I think we're going to do maybe one more, and then I just have 1 minute of closing comments. If,
Okay, we have one more question. Who hasn't asked a question? Let me just ask that.
This is a comment, it's helpful.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Okay, we'll have quick lightning round comment. How about that?
1 minute.
Just two things. First of all, I live in Pasco County, and you talk about transportation.
It's not on.
I live in Pasco County. How do I tell?
This is on.
I don't know. All right, I live in Pasco County. And Pasco County changed their comprehensive plan in 2010, adopted a mobility fee with a tax increment ordinance. Nothing much happened for a couple of years. They're now building like crazy along State Road 54. The population of Pasco County is going to double since 2020. I think 2040 is the plan. So when you think about what's going on in terms of the traffic, and you got to think about all the stuff that's coming down from Pasco. Okay.
Yes.
Second thing I wanted to talk about, or just mention, is when we talk about autonomous cars, the methodology they want to use now for collision avoidance and whatever is the 5G network, which is the next generation cell phone network that's being implemented across the country right now. 5G appears to be very dangerous. It is a higher frequency than the standard transmissions they're using now. And higher frequencies don't travel as far as the current frequencies do, which means they have to increase the output power substantially, and they have to put in at least 10-to-1 cell towers over what they have now. This is a real health hazard and really needs to be looked into because 5G is dangerous. And it's the kind of thing that'll kill you slowly. You're not gonna, some people may be affected right away, but it's gonna have serious health effects. And you'll never see them publish this because there's so much money behind this. All the phone companies are rolling out 5G. 5G is dangerous. It's very, very powerful. In order to travel, you have to put out like 100 times more watts to get the same distance. Even then they can't. So they have to put towers like every 1,000 feet or something like that. They're gonna put them on telephone poles.
And I agree, I'm not certain, but I have a relative who's one of the world authorities on microradiation, and they are dangerous. And that's why I don't carry an iPhone, because the little flip phone I have has a lot less power in it than an iPhone. And the more microwaves you have, cancer is the #1 thing that they look at. And research has shown that it is something that hasn't been proven one way or the other, but it is concerning enough that it needs more research. So I tell my kids, don't put it in your pocket, carry it on your outside, and because long term, people like me, I'm done for anyway. But the bottom line is that you really have to pay attention to some of these things that we're just not used to thinking about. And you have to keep an open mind.
Okay, yeah, I don't think this works, so I'll just speak loud. I wanted to say, I offered the ride in the Tesla. I just want to say why electric cars are important, just a couple points. People have been saying electric cars are the future for maybe 100 years. Well, that changed on August 1st. Electric cars are here. The Tesla Model 3, which is the one I got a month ago, was the 6th best-selling car in America. That's between a Nissan Elantra, a Nissan Altima, and a Hyundai Elantra. And by December, it'll be either the first or the second. Partially because of subsidies, let's not get into that, but it will be one of the most popular cars sold in the US, even though it's selling at 50,000. The second thing is, just to go off of the point, the individual May who talked about autonomous driving, about the 30-year payback. Don't necessarily agree with that because of the cost curves, but he was 100% correct that in autonomous driving, because the utilization of the vehicles is 10 times higher, the payback is 10 times faster. So I don't think when we get to autonomous, if you look at any of the manufacturers, 95% of the manufacturers are doing all their autonomous work in EVs. There are a couple that are doing it in gas cars, but 95% of it is in EVs.
And I agree with you. In fact, by 2045, I predict that the internal combustion engine will be outlawed in most major cities in America. Just from a health point, as a physician, the health risks of internal combustion engines, it's beyond a doubt. It is just, if you have lung problems or anything else, so look for that. It'll be just like London, you'll have to pay to get in.
Okay. Well, thank you all. We're just going to spend 1 minute recapping a couple things. Take a program, look on the back. Those are the sponsors who helped make this possible. The Competitive Enterprise Institute, Cascade Policy, Randall was with Cato, Baruch, the Reason Foundation. They all paid the expenses of the speakers to get here. Citizens Organized for Sound Transportation is our local group. Also, No Tax for Tracks has actually it has 2 organizations, 2 Facebooks. If you're on Facebook and you're not there, Google or search on Facebook, No Tax for Tracks. There's one for Hillsborough and there's one for Pinellas. Be sure to like the pages because we need to have a way to keep you informed and engaged. We will send out an email to kind of recap some of the things. I hope to put some links in there in case some of you have asked for links of information. What? Oh, and on Ion Tampa Bay or on Facebook? Okay. IonTampaBay.com is Sharon's blog. Her husband, Mark, has been filming, so it will probably be on both the Facebook page, the video of today, if you want to share it with your friends, and then possibly even on her blog site. Any other action alerts that we're going to
Ion Tampa Bay on YouTube.
We're going to probably be sending out something to contact the county commissioners, for those of you in Hillsborough, to try and keep the petition effort off the ballot. It looks like they're going to get enough signatures, but there's an issue with the audit, and the county commission can stop the financial impact statement. They can require that the audit be completed before they give the supervisor of election the financial impact, and that would stop it from going on the ballot. So there's ways we're going to be engaging in that, but we can't do it if we don't have people helping us participate. We need numbers. So thank you all very much, and you're free to go.